So a couple of days ago, presumably Ukraine launched an attack on Moscow, hitting a residential area, scale understandably. And the report explained how a bunch of the drones were shot down uh, using conventional means, and a bunch also were taken down using electronic warfare. And I was watching Tim Pool report on this, and he was pretty adamant that it was impossible to take a drone down with electronic warfare, which I found very interesting because uh, that's something I'm well aware is a fact that drones can be taken down via electronic warfare, and it's been that way for a while. It's something, uh, I mean, obviously, one of the main features of making a drone navigate is utilizing GPS, and jamming GPS has been a major focus of all our adversaries, especially Russia. And I was surprised that Tim Pool, who's both intelligent and has access to a lot of information, didn't seem even open to the idea of it. It was, pretty much just denying it was even remotely possible. So I said, well, if Tim Pool doesn't know this, maybe other people don't as well. So maybe this is a good topic for a video. So I want to read a little bit from the Scientific American, just to get in the scope of how long this has been going on. Title of the article is Satellite-Based Navigation Proved Its Mettle During the 1991 Persian Gulf War, leading to what some say is an overdependence on jammable GPS technology. And now an excerpt from that article. Coalition troops also got a glimpse of GPS's greatest weakness during the Gulf War. Iraqi forces installed jammers, for example, on the top of landmarks such as Saddam Hussein's palaces to prevent them from being hit. This helped the military realize early on that it would have to further develop its laser-guided munitions and other weapons that acquire targets when GPS is unavailable. Jamming disrupts a receiver's ability to pick up data from the satellites by adding more noise to the signal transmission. Tinkering with the signal-to-noise ratio is not difficult, given how weak GPS signals generally are by the time they reach the Earth. Such signals have been compared with the amount of light given off by a 25-watt bulb as seen from about 20,000 kilometers away. So the short of it is they're basically saying is the GPS signal is so weak by the time it's interacting with terrestrial sources that jammers or any kind of transmitter that's closer to your target that you want to prevent from receiving GPS is relatively easy to do. If you want to convert it to the same light analogy they're doing, it's the equivalent of hitting your target with a floodlight. And although the photons from the 25-watt bulb are still reaching you, you can't see them at all because the floodlight has completely overwhelmed it. Okay, so I want to take a few excerpts here from the Journal of Strategic Security. Okay. Like in smart weapon, yeah, I said the Journals of Strategic Security. Like in smart weapons, the miniaturization of lightweight antenna systems is useful for UAVs with low payload capacities, as well as affecting communication links. Spoofing can impact their coordinates. In 2011, Iran spoofed and captured a U.S. RK-170 Sentinel UAV by redirecting it to land inside Iranian borders. Adding to the embarrassment of the Obama administration, Iran subsequently accused the U.S. of spying within Iranian airspace and have reportedly attempted to reverse engineer the design of the UAV. From the same Journal of Strategic Security, whilst more determined groups, such as organized criminal gangs and terrorists, may have the means to produce and acquire more powerful jamming devices than those used by privacy seekers, it is still argued by some critics that it would take a significant mastery of GPS technology to bring apocalypse visions of a cyber hell to life, as urged by cyber specialist Martin Thomas. However, the widespread use of jamming devices that are intended for privacy indiscriminately and unintentionally affect other services that rely on GPS. A similar theme is identified in Europe. The Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs confronted Russian authorities over concerns that civilian aviation and communication systems have been repeatedly jammed in connection with nearby Russian military activities near Norway's eastern Finnmark region. On one occasion, in September 2017, the airlines had to navigate with the help of radio signals due to the loss of GPS when they entered East Finnmark's airspace. Similar instances have occurred in other European countries bordering Russia. Unlike cybercrime, which has no limitations in terms of ranges, GPS jamming and spoofing can only be achieved within a minimum of a few meters to a maximum of over 100 miles. In practice, this puts critical infrastructure and other assets in certain geographical locations in more danger than others. So, gist of it there is it's happening, it's been being done, it's been going on for years, so it's not something that's, hard to imagine happening. Okay, so I'm going to show you a video here. Now, a lot of what Russia has been using in the past, and is probably relying on heavily, is they have these massive truck-mounted units because they need their own power supply, either an onboard generator or carrying generators on the flatbed, and pretty massive dishes, almost looking like 8 to 16 meter dishes, if I remember the sizing correctly. And these are what they're depending on, but odds are they're probably starting to pick up a lot of the handheld stuff, and they're probably repurposing all kinds of radio transmitters to act as GPS jammers as well. So I want to show this particular one here. And this is under the browser. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and kill the sound because just in case the thing keeps running over, it kind of gets obnoxious. So what we got here is a Lithuanian-built handheld unit designed to take out UAVs, and this is a pretty good one because in this position we don't even have a lot of the other ones. You can kind of see the operator very close by, and in this case the operator isn't in view, and they're basically able to shut this drone down. Now, it doesn't make it fall immediately from the sky or anything like that. What it does do is it jams the GPS, and once the unit can't tell what's going on, if it doesn't have instructions on board trying to bring it to its target after that point, what it will do is most drones will either go into a stay and hover mode, just try to right themselves and be good. They'll try to find themselves to a fail-safe point, or alternately, once everything else fails, they'll try to safely land in order to prevent the destruction of the drone. Now, these are just instructions that can be overrode. It is a possibility that some of these drones that crashed in the ritzy parts of Moscow may have been intended for other targets, and that when the RF transmitters, electronic warfare, jammed them, that they're essentially they had instructions on their chips telling them that if they lost communications with GPS, to essentially dive for the ground and try to blow anything up and basically target of opportunity rather than final destination. Okay, so we have this one here. This is an article from Forbes recently. This is stuff that's been going on over the last couple of months. Russia's electronic warfare troops knocked out 90% of Ukraine's drones. Okay, key here is this electronic warfare troops. This is not drones being shot down by conventional means, this is Russia using these transmitters. And obviously, they're using the big truck mounted ones. And like I said, they're probably getting any kind of RF transmitter they can get hold of and repurposing them to this end. I mean, anything that's powerful enough to broadcast many miles. I mean, obviously, your effective range of jamming, for instance, you have a transmitter that can transmit 100 miles. Unless it's specifically designed for it, it probably won't be able to jam GPS out to 100 miles, but it probably has a good chance of jamming within 10 miles, depending on the broadcast strength of the unit. Mm. And, okay. Uh, This is from Business Insider. Ukraine is losing 10,000 drones a month to Russian electronic warfare systems that send fake signals and screw with their navigation, researchers say. Now, this is a little bit more interesting because jamming, just basically making it so that the unit's incapable of receiving GPS is a lower end technological feat. Convincing your target that it's actually receiving GPS, but you're giving it the wrong signal is a little trickier because if you, for instance, if the onboard computer should have an ability to tell itself that, oh, if the GPS suddenly changes a drastic amount where it's not mathematically possible that, like for instance, that if the jammer tells the drone that it's 100 miles in a different location, it should have a logic ability to say, oh, that's not possible for me to move 100 miles in 1 second, so therefore disregard. So it means if they're doing it effectively, they're not just randomly giving it new signals. They're giving it specific signals. So they are calculating on the fly where it is and then giving it a change in coordinates that's small enough that it doesn't trip the logic sensor and they're crashing them into the ground or forcing them to land or whatever it is they're doing. So just a quick recap of what can be what's going on here in terms of electronic warfare. We have GPS jamming, which essentially the GPS signals are very weak by the time they reach the surface of the Earth. It doesn't take very much of a transmitter to overpower those signals, especially if you're going after a commercial off-the-shelf drone. And I imagine the military drones have only limited capability of recovering from a loss of GPS. And then there's what this article is suggesting, which is known as meconning, when you give the target false information in such a way that you talk it into doing what the controller didn't intend it to do. And then there's RF overload, which is essentially a form of EMP, where you utilize standard radio frequency transmitters as a form of EMP weapon. Essentially, you can use things like radars, microwaves, other high power emitters, and it's very easy to focus the energy in a more not quite pinpoint direction, but a more focused direction in the general omnidirectional transmitter. And if the chips on board aren't shielded, it doesn't take a whole lot of energy to wipe them clean or at least disrupt their ability to do what they're doing, which will generally probably cause it to either crash or fail to maneuver at that point. And the Russians have been working on RF broadcast weaponry since way back in the Soviet Union. They've been doing stuff far longer than we have. So it's not hard to imagine that they probably have a lot of stuff that's field mobile now by this point. Another technique they could be using would be laser dazzling, where they are hitting the target with a laser. And so if it's utilizing its optics in any way, like for instance, either the controller is looking for landmarks through the camera and it's transmitting back, uh, they will lose that ability to do it. If it's a military grade unit and it's using some form of terrain following software and it's using optical features to look for geographic and man-made landmarks, laser dazzling can just completely take that out. So if the unit is depending on GPS and then it's using optical recognition as a backup, you can take these out pretty easily. And it doesn't take, and we're talking about 1980s technology in terms of laser, something that could be easily man portable, that a slow moving drone like that could be painted very quickly, easily, and as long as necessary to do it. Um, there's been field tests of that going against much faster targets than a UAV that worked astoundingly well. And there's another methodology of RF duping where Ukrainians have been using some drones to act almost as HARM missiles, using them to have some form of RF receiver on board that locks onto radar signatures and other things of the Russians and basically homes in on it, trying to wreck it. And RF duping is basically you set up a transmitter designed to draw targets off that are feeding off, that are trying to hone in on RF, and basically bring them to a place where there's a kill zone. And so these are all really fairly simplistic things. They've been around for a long time. They've been perfected. Essentially, the Russians were very good at EW during the Soviet Union, and they and all our other adversaries watched what we did uh, in the Middle East, and they have worked long and hard at GPS jamming because they know how dependent we are on it. There's a lot of stories coming out of Syria where they've been having a lot of trouble hitting targets because of GPS jamming, and if it's happening in Syria, good chances it's the Russians supplying the technology. So, in the comments below, is this something you already knew about? Did you know that drones could be jammed? Did you know GPS could be jammed? Is there something you know about the technology that I didn't go over here that you think the listeners might find interesting? Feel free to comment below. Please smash the like button. If the YouTube algorithm brought you here and you're not one of my regular subscribers, please consider looking at my other titles. I go over a lot of different topics. You might find some of the stuff I do interesting. Consider subscribing. And if you know somebody who might find this interesting, please share it with them. Well, thank you for spending time with me this evening. Hope to see you again in a future video.